I didn't think much of it at first. Dating apps had always felt like a gamble, but Hunter seemed different. His messages were effortless, his jokes just the right amount of sarcastic. He wasn't overly aggressive like some guys, nor was he too distant. He was polite, well-dressed, stable, the kind of man I had convinced myself I should be dating. The first date was dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant. He was charming, attentive, asked all the right questions, almost too perfect. But at the time, I brushed it off. Maybe I was just overthinking. By the third date, little things started to nag at me. The way he'd stare at me for too long, as if he was studying my face instead of listening to what I was saying. The way his jaw tightened slightly whenever I mentioned male co-workers or past relationships. Subtle, almost imperceptible shifts, but they left a strange feeling in my gut. Then came the fourth date. The night everything changed. We met at a bar downtown, the kind of place where the lighting is dim and the music is soft enough for conversation. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting at a booth in the corner. His drink, whiskey, neat, was, finished. You're late, he said, smiling, but there was something in his voice that made my stomach tighten. Just 5 minutes, I laughed awkwardly, slipping into the seat across from him. That's when I noticed his eyes were glazed, his posture slightly slouched. He had been drinking before I even arrived. The night took a turn after that. His touches lingered longer. His compliments felt wrong. At one point, his hand moved from my shoulder to the nape of my neck, fingers pressing slightly, like a test. By the time we left, he was visibly drunk. He walked me to my car, his arm draped over my shoulders, his fingers tracing small circles against my skin. "Come home with me," he murmured. I laughed, trying to keep it light. "Not tonight." His grip tightened. "Come on, you know you want to." Something about the way he said it, low, almost possessive, made my breath hitch. I pulled away, keeping my tone casual. "I'll call you later, okay?" His jaw clenched. For a moment I thought he would argue. Then just as quickly he forced a smile. "Yeah, later." I got in my car, locking the doors the second I shut them. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I exhaled. Then I saw the headlights in my rearview mirror. Too close, too familiar. I turned onto my street. He followed. I parked, so did he. My pulse pounded as I stepped out of my car and turned to face him. "Hunter, what are you doing?" He leaned casually against his door, hands in his pockets. "Just making sure you got home safe." His voice was flat, empty. I forced a smile. "I'm fine, you can go now." He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. I hurried inside, locking the door. The feeling of being watched didn't leave me. The next morning, I blocked his number. Then the call started, no caller ID. Ring after ring at 2 a.m. When I answered, there was nothing but silence. Then the flowers arrived, bouquets left at my door, no notes, no messages. At first, I told myself it was a coincidence, a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew. Then the break-in happened. It was late. I was curled up in bed with a book when I heard it. The faint creak of a door opening. My stomach turned to ice. I lived alone. I had locked everything. I sat up, straining to hear. Silence. I grabbed my phone, sliding out of bed, heart hammering. In my chest, my fingers hovered over 911 when a drawer opened. I froze. A closet door creaked. My breath caught. I dropped to the floor, crawling under the bed, hands shaking as I finally pressed call. The operator's voice was calm. Too calm. 911. What's your emergency? There's someone in my house, I whispered. Are you alone? Yes. My throat was dry. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. I covered my mouth. The operator's voice was distant now, drowned by the sound of my own heartbeat. "Ma'am, I need you to stay on the line." The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched. Then, the sound of breathing. Right next to the bed. I squeezed my eyes shut, every muscle in my body locked in place. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. A full minute passed. Then 2. Then the front door slammed. The police arrived minutes later, but he was already gone. No forced entry, no proof. Nothing except the undeniable truth. Hunter had been inside my home. They found no fingerprints. No signs of struggle. Just my things, shifted slightly, as if someone had been rifling through them. The restraining order was granted immediately. I moved apartments. changed my number, but sometimes, late at night, I still wake up gasping, the phantom weight of a presence in my room. And sometimes I check my peephole before leaving my apartment, and sometimes I swear I see a shadow, just far enough away to make me question if he's really there. I tell myself he's gone. I tell myself I'm safe. But deep down I know he's still watching. It started with a note, folded neatly, slipped through the vent of my locker. I was only 12 years old, barely starting to navigate the awkwardness of middle school. You're the prettiest girl in school. I watch you every day. I laughed when I read it, showing it to my best friend, Sarah. Ooh, she teased, nudging me. You have a secret admirer. I crumpled the note, shoving it in my bag. It's probably just a joke. But the next day, another one appeared. I love your ponytail. You should wear it more often. I froze. That day, for the first time in weeks, I had worn my hair in a ponytail. Something twisted in my stomach. This wasn't a prank. Someone had been watching me, and whoever it was knew details they shouldn't. That afternoon, I walked home alone, my backpack slung over one shoulder. The autumn wind was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves. Then I heard footsteps behind me, not hurried, not loud, just there. I turned my head slightly. A boy, Chris. He was in my math class, quiet, unremarkable, always sitting in the back. He never spoke much. I barely knew anything about him, but he knew something about me. I walked faster. So did he. I took a different route, cutting through a neighborhood I never used. I checked over my shoulder, still there. The second I reached my driveway, I sprinted inside, slamming the door shut and locking it. My heart pounded in my ears. For the first time, I was scared. The next day at school, Chris approached me. I was at my locker when I heard him clear his throat. Did you get my notes? My breath hitched. It was him. I forced a smile. Oh, yeah, that was you? He nodded eagerly. His eyes were too intense, his grin stretched too wide. I want to take you on a date, he said. I blinked. A date? We were 12. I'm not allowed to date, I lied. His expression darkened. That's okay, he said, voice low. I'll wait. My hands went cold. After that, things got worse. I heard him whispering to his friends in class. I'm gonna kiss her, he said, even if I have to corner her. A shiver ran down my spine. I started avoiding him. I stopped walking to my locker alone. I changed my usual routes. I asked Sarah to always meet me after class, but it didn't matter. Chris found me anyway. The first time was outside my house. I was brushing my hair, glancing out my window when I saw him, standing across the street, just watching. I yanked the blinds shut, heart hammering. Maybe he was just walking home. Maybe it was a coincidence. But the next day, I found another note on my doorstep. If I can't have you, no one can. I dropped it like it had burned me. This wasn't a crush. This was something else. I told my parents. They called the school. The principal's response? Boys will be boys. I wanted to scream, boys will be boys? This wasn't cute. This wasn't harmless. This was stalking, but no one took it seriously. That night, I locked my bedroom window. Then the rocks started. Tiny pebbles at first, tapping against the glass, then louder, harder. A thunk in the middle of the night. I barely slept. One evening I peeked outside. Chris was standing in my yard. Still, silent, staring. I screamed. My dad rushed outside, but by the time he got there, Chris was gone. For weeks I lived in fear. I never walked home alone. I never sat by the windows. I checked over my shoulder constantly. Then one day, he stopped. No more notes, no more messages. Chris disappeared from my life. For years, I tried to forget. Then one night I saw his name on the news. I was scrolling through my phone when the headline stopped me cold. Local man arrested for attempted kidnapping. My stomach dropped. I clicked on the article. The mugshot filled my screen. Chris. His face was older, but the same unsettling grin remained. The details made my blood run cold. He had broken into a woman's home, waited, hid, tried to grab her the moment she walked in. She had barely escaped. I dropped my phone, hands shaking. I thought about those notes, the whispers, the rocks at my window, and I realized I had been lucky someone else wasn't. I should have seen the signs. Looking back, they were obvious, flashing like neon warning lights. But when you're inside something, when you're emotionally invested, you convince yourself it's not that bad. At first, Emily seemed perfect. We met through mutual friends. She was the kind of girl who could make anyone feel like they were the only person in the room. Confident, funny, the life of every party. And she liked me. It was flattering, addictive even, the way she looked at me like I was the most interesting man alive. Things escalated fast. We went from casually talking to spending nearly every day together. At first I liked it. I liked her, but then she started pushing. Little things at first, questions that didn't feel like questions. Who were you texting? Why didn't you answer me right away? You're always on your phone, but you take forever to reply to me. The idenu tone was playful at first, but soon it wasn't. A month in, she asked me to share my location with her. Just so I know you're safe, she said, tilting her head like it was nothing. I laughed. What? No way. Her smile didn't waver, but something flashed in her eyes. You don't trust me. Emily, it's just weird. We don't need that. She dropped it, or at least I thought she did. 2 days later, my phone buzzed in the middle of the night. Emily started sharing her location with you. I stared at the screen. I never asked for this. It sat there, a quiet demand. Confronted her about it the next day. I just want you to do it too, she said. It's not fair if I'm sharing mine and you won't share yours. I should have said no. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I gave in. That was my first mistake. Then the fight started. If I didn't text back fast enough, she'd spam my phone. Why aren't you answering? Who are you with? Why are you lying to me? At first, I tried to be understanding. Maybe she had trust issues. Maybe she had been hurt before. Then came the unannounced pop-ups. I'd be out with friends, and suddenly there she was. Oh, I was just in the area. Except she wasn't. I checked my phone. She had tracked my location. One night I was at a friend's house when my phone buzzed. Emily. I ignored it. I just needed a break. 20 minutes. Later, my friend looked out the window. Dude, he said. Why is Emily outside? My stomach dropped. I walked outside, trying to stay calm. Emily, what are you doing here? You weren't answering, she said, voice eerily calm. I was worried. Her hands were clenched into fists. I should have ended things then, but I didn't. I thought I could fix it. I was so wrong. The night I broke up with her was hell. She sobbed, screamed, begged me not to leave. When I didn't budge, she flipped. Her eyes went dead. You'll regret this, she whispered. I told her to leave. She refused. My roommate had to physically escort her out. I blocked her. I thought it was over. Then the calls started. At first, it was from unknown numbers. Then it was blocked calls. At 2 a.m. then my car was keyed. Deep, jagged scratches like claw marks. I knew it was her, but I had no proof. And then came the break-in. It was late. 2:30 a.m. I was half asleep when I heard it. A soft creak. I froze. I knew I had locked everything. The room was pitch black. My pulse roared in my ears. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate. My stomach turned to ice. I reached for my phone. It buzzed before. I could touch it. Emily, a text message. I miss you. My hands shook. Then, another text. Turn around. The closet door slammed open. A scream erupted from the darkness. Emily lunged at me. I barely had time to react before she was on me, nails digging into my skin. She had a knife. I shoved her back, scrambling away. She was laughing. You don't get to leave me, she whispered. She raised the knife again. I bolted, slammed the door between us, wedged a chair under the handle. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. She's in my house, I gasped. She has a knife. I could hear her breathing on the other side. Then a soft knock. Come on, she whispered. Just let me in. My chest tightened. Then sirens, flashing lights. The cops burst in. I heard them pull her away, screaming. Then silence. Emily was arrested. I got a restraining order, but sometimes I still wake up in a cold sweat, convinced. I hear the closet door creak open, and sometimes I check my locks twice, and sometimes I swear I hear a whisper just outside my door. You'll regret this.